Okay, so finding a nice, comfortable position where you can be relaxed and yet alert. Checking in with your posture, checking that your spine is centered, your heart is open, shoulders back, Mhm. and stretching up and allowing the body to soften, to relax to whatever extent it wants. And we'll start with one sound of the bell. And allowing the attention to sink deeply into the body. Welcoming whatever's here. And noticing any resistance, any bracing or holding, any wanting things to be different. And doing your best to drop any effort to resist.
Lori, all I can hear is somebody typing.
Sorry, that's me. I forgot.
Oh,
I forgot that to tell Carissa that we moved our clocks forward.
oh,
Probably
okay,
should
okay.
restart in an hour.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I've emailed her now and we can get back to our regularly scheduled program. Oh Lord. Just accepting whatever's here, smiling to whatever's here. And becoming aware of the body breathing, aware of when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. And noticing that sense of being the subject of this experience, the witness. The one who notices bodily sensations, who notices when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. And noticing how with each in-breath there's a feeling of kind of energizing. With each out-breath there's a feeling of relaxation. You may notice that, you may not. Noticing that sense of aliveness with the breath. Just a general sense of aliveness in the body. Maybe even a sense of flow or energy. It may be there, it may not. Just looking around for it. Think of it as a game. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're just bringing awareness to the body breathing. Letting each moment in as fully as we can, dropping any resistance. And now expanding your focus range to include not just the body breathing, but also sound. So, not trying to hear anything, but just receptively noticing sound. It may be the sound of my voice, it may be background noise, it may be really anything. And noticing not just the sound, but also the silence in between in time and also space. So there may be sound in one direction and silence in another. Continuing to be aware of when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out, kind of using that as an anchor. So fairly expanded focus range. And continuing to notice that you're the one who's aware. Notice any resistance, any wanting things to be different, any trying to figure things out, and dropping that, dropping any effort to resist. Just relaxing and letting the moment in. And now expanding the focus range even more. So it includes the body and breath and sound, and also emotions, including emotional body sensations and becoming aware of your emotional state. It may be subtle, the emotions. There may be a bit of several emotions, maybe some joy, some worry or anxiety, some peace, some sadness, some love. Just letting it in, letting the heart play its tune. And now even further expanding the focus range. So body, breath, sound, emotions, and thoughts, mental talk, mental images. You don't have to be aware of all at once, but just letting the attention float within the entire range of experience, the entire sensorium, even including smell and taste. Just letting the attention go where it wants, but watching it all from the seat of awareness. Sitting in what's sometimes called open awareness. Continuing to be aware of any defending, any resisting, any controlling, and dropping any effort to control, any effort to change this moment at all. And just relaxing. Surrendering to the reality of this moment. Letting it touch the very depths of your being, whatever's here. If you like using the breath as an anchor, so maybe 30% of your attention on the breath and the rest on whatever else draws your attention. By putting that part of your focus on your breath, it helps to anchor you to the present moment, helps to keep you from getting pulled into thoughts or pulled out of your seat of awareness. Continuing to practice, notice, relax, release. Say thank you for this moment. Thank you that we can be together here tonight. And repeating to yourself, may this practice help me to be free from suffering. May this practice help me to be free from suffering. So that I can help others to be free from suffering. And they can help others to be free from suffering. And so on and so on. And out and out. And with the sound of the bell, we'll bring this meditation to an end. So stretching, whatever needs stretching or massaging or moving, whatever needs massaging or moving. Okay, anyone want to share anything about that? I really should have shut my microphone off when I was emailing Carissa. Yeah, Jill.
Well, I loved your typing. Number one, I thought that really brought a lot of levity, and I don't know, it was just kind of fun. Um, I was able to settle in pretty well. And before I knew it, I heard you talking about if you've become drifty or you're someplace else, go back to your anchor. That's when I realized I had been out someplace, all kinds of different places. So the anchoring back in, and then I started counting, and that was really helpful, and it was quite pleasant. So thank you.
Glad you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I find that I have a hard time not drifting off to sleep when I meditate in the afternoon or evening. So I don't know if there's solutions to that, except for just not doing it in the afternoon or evening. But that was my experience.
Yeah. Well, with sleepiness, there's or you know, that sort of sinking feeling or you know, that loss of attention. One of the things you can do is put the attention more on the area around the nostrils. It tends to be more more energizing. You can also emphasize the in-breath a little bit, even though that's controlling, but it, you know, it's just a little bit of an effort to inhale can help. The other thing that can help is you can do it with your eyes open. And just generally, what I find with posture, like generally I guide that, you know, to tilt the pelvis forward and keep the spine centered and keep the shoulders back, and stretch up. And if you try and really, like, that's a posture that tends to keep you quite alert, especially the shoulders back, not chest open. So if you know, you can just try and focus on that. The other thing is, generally what keeps you awake is being interested in the meditation. So, and interest is actually something you can generate.
Mm.
So, you know, one of the ways you can do that is to tell yourself, I'm going to see if I can do this. This is the most important thing in the world. One other thing you can do is just, I mean, things like counting the breath help. I find, I don't know if you've fallen asleep when you're counting the breath, but, and the more like you can notice the subtleties of the moment, just really, you know, noticing the, you know, the characteristics of the sensations, the change in the sensations, and, you know, change in intensity, change in geographic area, what exactly does it, you know, is it heat, is it cool, is it tension, is it flowy, is it, you know, so the more you can get into the particulars of it, the more you just sort of yeah, it's basically making a little more effort, but it's not effort like trying to control anything. It's just that strong intention, that strong um, 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 you know, making the effort to notice the subtleties. Also, it's important to ask yourself, are you sleepy because you're lacking in sleep, or is it some other reason? So often it's our samskaras that cause us to be sleepy, because our samskara says, you know, I don't want to change. I don't want you to release me. I'm going to put you to sleep. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that we defend, and sleepiness is one of them. Restlessness is another, right? So yeah, just work with it. Notice the characteristics of the sleepiness too. Like, where do you feel the sleepiness? How is it manifesting in your body?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Anne?
Yeah, probably related is often happens I start yawning and then water, like I'm not crying, it's just my eyes start watering. It's like as if I'm trying to, you know, sabotage the, you know, my sit. Sometimes I think that because I think, okay, especially lately, I'm trying to get enough sleep. Like I can't be, you know, I can't be lacking in sleep. So and then I was trying to just be aware, like I like the counting, you know, the practice of counting on the exhale, or just trying to feel, can I feel the air coming out, coming in just around this area, help me to focus on something very fine. But that was just, you know, a report that was kind of related then with Shannon's. Yeah.
And the open awareness, I mean, the open awareness is one that generally has less effort and is easier to fall asleep in. Whereas, you know, like something like the counting the breath is something that, you know, tends to take more effort and less likely to fall asleep. So you can also switch what you're doing, you know, to something like that. But just stretching up, bringing the shoulders back, taking a deep in-breath, these things tend to, you know, they also say one thing, I mean, you can stand up. You can also like splash your face with cold water. You can take a cold shower before you sit. If you want to be, really make sure you don't fall asleep.
Yeah, thank
There's
you.
there's stories of these, monks in days of old who would sit on the edge of a well. And if they fell asleep, they'd fall in and, they might die. So, um, there's even a story of a monk who like tore his eyelids off. I don't suggest you do that. Um, but clearly sleepiness is a problem or can be a problem, right? It's in the literature. At the end of the day, it's not a big deal, right? Even if you fell completely asleep, okay. No biggie. Enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up, Okay. And I mean, we're going to be doing open awareness for the meditation this week. This way, the idea is to, we've covered basically all the different aspects of experience, body, breath, mental talk, mental images, emotions, sound, smell, taste, and then putting them all together. So we can play with the focus range. We can have the focus range narrow. It could be just on the rise and fall of the belly. It could be on the entire sensory experience and anything in between, any combination in between, any way you want to slice and dice it. So it's good to be able to, work with your attention and, basically put it anywhere you want.
I have a question. The thing that you first, the thing that you said about interest, really, that really spoke to me. That was working tonight for some reason. I don't know that I can will it, but sometimes I recognize that I'm staying alert because I'm interested in. The thing that I was paying attention because my back was really bothering me during the sit. So then I was using that to try to relax and release. And I've been thinking, I've been trying to figure out the release part of it. And like, I'm stuck between releasing the thoughts, like, my back is bothering me. So telling myself just like, I don't need to keep saying that, or releasing the resistance, which feels like, I don't know that it seems like it's something different. Like those are two different things. Like, am I releasing the part, or are they the same? Is it like the thought that keeps repeating? Is that an example of the resistance? Or is it something else?
Yeah, I mean, Mickey uses release in several different ways, and at the end of the day, he's, what he's describing is simply dropping the resistance. Both relax and release are terms he uses to mean dropping the resistance.
But
let me just, the thoughts that you're having are not resistance, but believing the thoughts, it's like I guess we can talk about it now, but he talked about how the mind is the place the soul goes to hide from the heart, right? And so generally there's an emotion that's driving, the emotion which is rooted in the samskara, which is driving the thoughts. And so the thoughts are coming up so that to draw your attention away from the heart, basically. And so you know, to the extent that you're trying to control your thoughts or trying to control your experience or trying to figure things out, that's all resistance. So you want to, he does talk about releasing the pull of the thoughts, right? He talks about he uses tug of war metaphor, right? You know, no matter how strong the other side is, you can all you have to do is let go of the rope, and you can't be pulled into the thoughts, right? And, you know, practically speaking, it means you have to recognize that they're just thoughts. They're not the truth. They're your personal mind. You know, they're garbage or silly or unhelpful or whatever, however, whatever helps you to, you know, recognize that you don't want to engage with them. And but you can't, you know, you can't try and stop them. Like, you can't stop them. You don't have the power to stop those thoughts, right? You have the power to substitute other thoughts, but you know, trying to make the thoughts stop is not helpful. It actually kind of gives them power, gives them juice.
And you can't stop the pain, the back pain, for example. So you're just, I mean, it may go away, it probably will, but you're just being with it then. And part of being with it might be that there are thoughts about it. And as long as you can recognize those as thoughts, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to, number one, stay in the seat of awareness. So you know,
Right.
keep noticing that you're the one who's aware of the pain. You're the one who's aware of the thoughts. You're not the thoughts. You're not the pain, right? The second part of it, the relax release, the key thing is that there's no problem here, right? And that can be really hard because
There's pain.
there's pain, and it's pretty hard to say this isn't a problem.
Yeah.
Right? On the other hand, if you let the pain in, if you don't resist the pain at all, you will see it's not a problem. It's just a sensation. But it's hard to, you know, until you let it in all the way, it's pain. It's like it's got that feel to it, right?
Right. The resistance is,
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Yeah. So, you know, really what you want to try and do is not resist the pain. Now this is assuming, I mean, this is not saying don't, like, you know, it doesn't mean you shouldn't adjust your posture to relieve the pain.
Right.
Or, you know, or hurt yourself if you're in a posture that's actually making it worse. Doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself, but, you know, in the moment, all you can do, you know, when the pain is there and it's not going away, and it's, you know, you feel like you've done all that you want to do about the pain or can do about the pain, then it can be actually really good practice. Because the thing about pain is, you know, we talked about interest. The pain will hold your interest. You will not be falling asleep. You'll not have any problem focusing on it, right? It is really a powerful, like, it will powerfully attract your attention, right? And so you can easily keep your attention on it, and you can really see ways in the moment in which you are resisting feeling it. And then, you know, drop that effort to resist. Drop that, whether it's a bracing in the body or, you know, whether it's the sense that this is a problem or that sense that I don't like this, I want it to stop, this is awful, whatever you're thinking. that you can, you can use the positive thinking to say something like, you know, I really want to understand my resistance here. I really want to notice every aspect of my resistance. I really want to drop all resistance and just let the pain in all the way, right? And be a very good teacher.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah. So, why don't we talk about the home practice? So we had the meditation on emotions. Anyone, any questions or observations around the meditation on emotions? And then there was the talk, navigating the ocean of life. Anyone want to share anything about that? Anything you found interesting, confusing, stupid? Yeah,
He
Martin?
talked he was talking a fair bit about grace and self-effort, the two components in your life.
Mhm.
But I'm not really sure grace for me is a religious term, so I'm not sure how we unpack that.
Yeah.
Grace
you
is
can
sort of
pick-
like fate in a way, or that's not
well,
personal.
grace is whatever is beyond your control. So, you know, um, the 13.8 billion years of all the infinite forces in the universe coming together in this moment, you can only do so much to control, right? Your body, you can only, you have limited control over your body, right? If I told you right now to, you know, um, make your kidney do this or that, your right kidney, or like, you know, um, um, if you have a sore throat, okay, well, heal your throat, like you have limited control. And so sometimes um, you can't drop the resistance, right?
Hmm.
That's just, I mean, whatever's responsible for that. My experience is sometimes sometimes it drops a little, sometimes it drops a lot, sometimes it doesn't seem to drop at all, sometimes it drops more or less completely. It's just recognizing that you don't have control. You have influence, but not control.
Well, that was the two components. One was your self-effort, I guess, is the one you have control over. And I don't know, I see like the term, I spent a lot of time with that term grace, and but for the grace of God, go I type thing. It's almost like what's beyond your control, but it's sort of in your favor. You know what I mean? It's I
Yeah,
don't
I
know, there was
mean,
something, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But
it is generally used in that sense to say that, in this case, dropping the resistance is something good. So grace allows, or doesn't allow something good to happen. It doesn't have to be the grace of God. It could be the grace of the forces of nature, the forces of physics, the quantum field, however you want to think of it.
it was a good talk, though. I enjoyed the be a captain of your own ship analogy a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is a big part of this practice. We're going to get into that more tonight. Um, um, just having your intention to release your samskaras, be stronger than your fear or desire, stronger than the urge to follow your personal mind. Right? It really is this, this battle between your higher mind and your personal mind. And so being the captain of your ship means that you're going to follow your higher mind, as much as you can, ideally all the time. But that's yeah, good luck with that. But we can go in that direction, right? We can recognize, he talks about knowing where you are and where you're going. Well, where we are generally, if you look closely at your daily experience, you'll see that your personal mind is the one that's mostly in control. So we want to shift it to the higher mind, and we can do that little bit by little bit. He gives this example in one of his talks, or several of his talks, but you might not have heard it, where he says, a really good practice is, when you're having a really good meal, or really good dessert, or whatever it is, don't take the last bite. Leave the last bite. Just as an act of discipline. Say, no, I'm in control here, not the cake. Anyway, yeah, thanks, Martin. Mark?
Yeah, I really like the talk, and that reminder about intention seems very important. And while I was listening to it, and maybe still, I feel like a bit of tension, confusion about surrender and intention, because in some ways those seem like opposites, like surrendering to what comes your way. Like, it seems like part of that is like about saying yes to everything. These are the things that present themselves. So, but then if you do that, then you're just being rudderless and saying yes to everything. So surrender is not saying yes to everything. Or surrender is like,
it's surrender. It's the
book.
The question is surrender. Right?
I'm just thinking of his book, The Surrender Experiment, and it seems like that was kind of the way that he was phrasing that, was he was going to say yes to everything that
no,
costs.
no, definitely not. No. He did give it's two things. It's surrender to reality, and it's saying no to the personal mind. So most of the examples he gives in the surrender experiment are examples where his personal mind was screaming, say no. Say no to this woman who built this cabin on your property and wants to live there. Say no to, renovating this guy's house. Say no to merging the company. Say no to, taking on this software project. He said yes, not because he was asked, but because his personal mind was saying no. And in fact, he had the capacity to take on those projects. So he was like, I know how to do this. I can do it. The only reason I don't want to do it is because my personal mind is saying don't do it. There's no other reason. I'm not actually, I'm not, there's just no reason to say no, except my personal mind doesn't want to. And he actually went a step further in some of what he talked about and said, that he would go out of his way to do the opposite of what his personal mind told him to do. And I've
And
actually,
that was the intention. So that's the rudder. Like that's what he's, that like he sets that up as the intention to begin with, so that there is an intention, so you can check it again. Like it seems like that's the sailing metaphor. Like
right.
there's a goal that you're
Yeah.
checking against.
Yes, and his goal and the pole star of his life is he does a number of talks where he talks about he talks about kind of the same thing, but he uses the pole star metaphor. And he's very clear that the pole star of his life is releasing all his samskaras. And in fact, he often says, I don't understand why anyone would have any other pole star, because this is the most important thing in life. This will give you the most beautiful life ever. Any sort of outside, I want to make a lot of money, I want to get married, I want to whatever else there might be. And if you want to experience love, then you want to release your samskaras, right? That's a much better strategy than finding someone to love. So yeah, he's very clear in saying that's his pole star. And so if your pole star or your destination is releasing all your samskaras, then learning to not listen to your personal mind, listen to as in like follow, do what it says, makes sense. And so then the strategy of surrendering to the reality, surrendering to what this moment is asking for, rather than what the personal mind is telling you, is a very strong intention. I mean, generally, when our fear and desire, our emotions tell us to do something, and often, as we see this week, that emotion acts through our mind. We think it's our mind, but it's actually our emotions driving our mind, right? So, surrendering to the moment rather than the personal mind and following the personal mind is a very, very strong intention. And it's also like dropping the resistance, right? It's having this strong intention to drop the resistance, which surrendering to reality is dropping the resistance. So it definitely doesn't mean saying yes all the time.
Right.
There will be many times where your personal mind will be saying yes.
Right.
And then it's the opposite, right?
Yeah. It still doesn't seem very practical in some ways, but saying no to the personal mind all the time.
Well, practically speaking, start with the small stuff. Don't worry, like, we can all sit here and go, well, if somebody sawing my arm off and I'm supposed to just let them saw my arm off, and, that's clearly no, right? If you're on your way to an important meeting and, your phone rings, you don't have to answer it, right? I mean, you don't have to, or if it, I mean, it's definitely not saying you have to say yes. And the surrender is more of an internal surrender, right? It's more of a dropping the resistance, dropping the inner resistance. It's really not like I'm, surrendering to like doing whatever somebody asks you to do. But again, it does often manifest as doing what somebody asks you to do, because quite often there's no reason to say no except your personal mind doesn't want to. I don't feel like it, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to wind up, doing all this volunteer work, and maybe that's good, right? I don't know. Anyway,
Okay, thanks.
you're going to wind up doing a lot of stuff that you don't feel like doing. No doubt about it. But that is the practice. Because I don't feel like it is for sure your personal mind. So
Yeah, it's dangerous, but
anyway, at the you know, at the end of the day, there is no clear, like, this is not telling you it's not sort of step 1, step 2, step 3, and the answer falls out of the process, right? You still have to make decisions in life constantly. And the idea is to try and to make those decisions from your higher mind, not your lower mind. So how can we train ourselves to do that?
yeah, that's hard to know what the high, it's much easier to know what the personal mind wants than what the higher mind.
Right. And that's why his practice was do the opposite of the personal mind.
It's sorry.
Do the opposite of what the personal mind wants.
Right. But that might be letting the person saw off your arm.
No, I think the higher mind would probably say,
Okay.
this is not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes the higher mind and the lower mind agree. So, you can't just always say do the opposite of what the personal mind says. You do have to bring some judgment in there, But again, that's not the situation you're generally in. The situation you're generally in is one where it's very easy to say no to the personal mind. Like, not easy in terms of the strength of the urge, but like it's an obvious, the personal mind wants, to eat chocolate or sleep in or, be lazy or, et cetera, not go out of your way to be kind or whatever. These are easy, obvious things, right? When an easy thing to do is to, do small acts of kindness or compassion, talking to someone you don't feel like talking to because, put a smile on their face or relieve their suffering a little bit. These are easy things to do that the personal mind says, it makes me uncomfortable, it makes me uncomfortable. You say, no, I'm doing this. Right? There's really so much we can do that's quite straightforward. It's not a big, philosophical debate. Yeah. Okay, Julie, and then Don.
I sort of thought of it as doing the opposite of the personal mind, because I sort of think of the higher mind as doing things for the greater good of us experiencing a wider set of experiences. So when I look at it like that, the surrender becomes to the present moment and what would sort of give us the most wide scope of experience that we could possibly have. And then we have to sort of, in the notice, relax, release, that we have to sort of center ourselves to feel what it actually feels like to be in that higher mind. But I'm curious to know, in terms of being able to sort of rid ourselves of our samskaras, it's been sounding a lot like with flow of energy and all that sort of stuff, we have to wait until it touches on something that sort of sets us off in either a positive or negative way. But I'm wondering, like, that seems like that could take forever to hit every negative that you've ever had. And if you want to get there faster, is there a way that you can, face the gauntlet of all of the things that you no longer want to carry, all the things that don't serve you anymore? Is there a way that, we can be more accepting of those changes and be able to sort of clear the path for our energy to go through us faster? Or is it just an amount of time? I mean, Mickey isn't 1,000 years old, and if he's had things that have come and gone through him, there must be a way that he was able to sort of deal with them in a larger way than just allowing them to be triggered at random points in his life. I just sort of
Well,
want to know what you think about that.
yeah. You can definitely speed it up. But the way to speed it up, there's kind of two ways to speed it up, but I think the more straightforward and less risky way to speed it up is simply to never listen to your personal mind. Because if you do that, you're going to be doing like that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. If you think about, that you are constantly, that you're vigilant to notice when it's your personal mind speaking, and either not following it or doing the opposite. And as well as this whole discipline thing in terms of saying, here's what I'm, this is my pole star, and I'm focused on that. And when you're in a good state of mind, you set these intentions and then you actually follow through on them. You're going to find that that's going to bring up a lot of crap. And the more open you are, the more you can relax and release and allow the moment in, and start releasing, the more like the stuff will come up more, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing you can do, so that's one. The other is that you can do what I sometimes call the samsaric simulator. So, you can, which samsara is like the world of suffering. So samsara is basically suffering. So Shinzen Young calls it trigger practice, where you basically trigger yourself, right? You can visualize a difficult experience. If you you can imagine the breakup of your relationship. You can imagine getting fired. You can imagine losing all your money. You can imagine being out on the street. You can imagine being sick, you can bring up all your fears, and you can also bring up your fantasies, your dreams, and notice the positive samskaras, notice the pull of the desire, right? You can do all that. It's a little dangerous because you're triggering things that may be overwhelming, and they may be overwhelming from a negative side. They may also be overwhelming from a positive side. You may bring up some fantasy, and then the next thing you know, you find yourself, like I want a cottage. So next thing you know, you're just like focused on getting the cottage, and you're going, and you've decided, I am going to get a cottage. You're going to drive yourself nuts trying to do whatever it takes to get a cottage, instead of, so you've just done the opposite of surrender. So, you have to be the judge of what, where you're at. But I mean, certainly the samsaric simulator, I find help. I do use that. I use that when something's coming up anyway, generally.
Okay.
And then I do
So-
that, I sit with it and I sort of bring it up. I intentionally bring it up.
And then are you going through the process of like how you deal with it? Are you just, are you
Practicing
just
relax,
strictly,
release, lean back,
okay,
or
okay,
notice, relax, release. I'm just,
okay,
I'm visualizing this experience happening, which triggers the emotions and the thoughts, and then I'm dropping the resistance to feeling that. So it's still notice, relax, release, but it's just, you say waiting for things to come up to trigger you. Well, this is intentionally bringing up the stuff that, triggers you. And sometimes I don't get triggered. Sometimes I'm trying to trigger myself. It's not working. Nothing's coming up, That's
how
fine.
does that work in terms of the positive then? Like if, in your example, if you wanted to, you're focusing on acquiring a cottage for your family, how is it then that your higher mind doesn't say, oh, like, how does it not cut in and say, well, you need a plan, you need to say, like, why would it all of a sudden be so impulsive that it would allow you to jeopardize other things in your life to accomplish that one thing? Like, wouldn't it just be that if you went through the process of thinking something positive like that, you would notice how important it is to you, and then you would naturally maybe prioritize it in a good way in your brain?
I'm kind of smiling because there is no good way. If you think your happiness is dependent on a cottage, you are doing the opposite of what Mickey is saying.
Okay.
So this is exactly what I mean by saying, like, you say, well, this might not be fast enough. I'm saying it'll be real fast if you really implement it. I'm not saying real fast, like, 6 months from now, you'll be, but I'm saying, like, to actually, every time you think your happiness is dependent on something outside, to drop that. That's the personal mind.
Okay, so if
Right.
we're in the surrender to the present moment stage, then you couldn't really have futuristic thoughts of something that would make you happy. You just need to be happy in the moment that you're in. Like, you need to feel contented or calm and peaceful in the moment that we're in, ultimately.
No, because and this there's a difference between practice and result. And in the moment, I have all these samskaras and I cannot wish them away. And in the present moment, there may not be peace, there may not be joy, there may not be love. In the present moment, there may be all sorts of crap. So the practice is to notice, relax, release. Let myself feel the samskaras. Let myself feel whatever's going on here. And let go. If I really want to release my samskaras, then let go of wanting to be calm, wanting to be peaceful, wanting to be joyful. Right? And there's a tension there. There's conceptually, a lot of this stuff, we have to kind of hold the opposites. Like, there's a practice that I was taught where, it's like, let go, like surrender, follow your bliss, surrender, follow your bliss. How do you hold these two, right? And you're saying, and quite often this comes up, it's like, well, these seem to be at odds. And it's like, yeah, yes, yes, grasshopper, this is a koan, right? This is, we are trying to, at some point it does go beyond concepts, and it does get into skillful means, in the sense that there's no absolute truth here, right? Because clearly, on the one hand, I want all my samskaras out because I want to experience this energy, this love, this joy. But if in the moment I'm trying to experience, like I'm trying to make something happen, then I'm actually resisting the moment, and I'm keeping, I'm going to create new samskaras and keep the old ones in there.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And I struggle with this all the time because at the edge of it, like I want a cottage, right? I want, you know, a good relationship. There's things I want, right?
Mhm.
And what I need to remember is, first of all, it's the personal mind that wants them, because none of those wants, the awareness wants nothing. The awareness has no preferences, and it has no emotions, and it has no thoughts, right? So like, and I use the term higher mind, but it's a bit of a fuzzy subject because to the extent that it's still mind, it's still got preferences,
Mhm.
right? It's still my small self, right? Who's focused on, me, myself, and mine, right?
Mhm.
And I can convince myself that, oh no, I'm doing this for like my spouse, but really, I want him to be happy so I can be happy,
It's me, right?
right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, one of the things in this chapter that he talks about is how, um, you know, our preferences are based on our experience. So if we have an experience and we experience, um, you know, it causes us to have a pleasant experience, a pleasurable experience, then we like that. And if it causes us to have an unpleasant experience, then we don't like that. And so we're not actually choosing what we like. We're just reacting based on, what the outside, what these different things outside cause us to experience in that moment, right? And so, you can even reduce it to saying like, you know, when I'm kind to someone, I feel good, right? So am I being kind to them because I want to feel good?
Mhm.
And what Mickey's saying is, yeah,
Right.
right? Generally, not in all cases. We may have transcended that, but for most of us, including me, I don't think I've transcended that, right? Um, so, uh, anyway, a long-winded answer to basically say, if you really put his stuff into practice, you're gonna go fast,
Thank you.
but it's
Are you
hard.
saying there's no higher mind then? There's just awareness?
Um,
Higher mind, you've just sort of determined.
again, it's skillful means, right? So you're, pretty intellectual, and you and you're looking for a formula that you can write down and follow. Um, in terms of skillful means, I find higher mind and lower mind is very helpful. And if I can just get to higher mind, I'm doing quite well. But ultimately, we do need to drop higher mind and go to like beyond myself, right? And just the whole, like, he talks about setting a goal, And I can't remember in that talk if he talks that, the goal should be releasing your samskaras, but the awareness doesn't care about releasing samskaras, because the awareness has no preferences, right? And at the end of the day, the awareness that he's talking about is a skillful means, because we have to drop that too. He talks about merging with the universal awareness, or whatever you want to call it, right? So at some point we even have to drop this idea that the awareness is me, because we have to drop the whole idea of me, right? So, the important thing is to practice what is skillful for where you're at. And for where I'm at, higher mind is very useful, because I'm not that far along. I still have lots of preferences. I still struggle with just the relationship issues, money issues, even just like I don't feel like it stuff, I don't feel like it, I'm 60, can't I just relax? Anyway, Dawn?
So my questions were, I had two, and one was, how do we watch our emotions when we're meditating without using our brain? Are we supposed to just feel like
You don't turn your brain off when you're meditating, or turn your mind off when you're meditating. I mean,
no,
hmm?
no, I'm just wondering, like, I know we're supposed to just let the brain be there, but if you're in your meditation, if you say, okay, so now notice your emotions, what are you sensing about your emotions? Where does that information come from? So that we're not getting into our brain and overthinking it. How do we?
Well, generally emotions are in the body. So what I find is to notice the emotional body sensations.
Yeah.
I mean, emotions are pretty ethereal beyond the body. So, I mean, there is a subtle difference between emotional body sensations and other body sensations. There's regular body sensations. But just by noticing them, just by noticing the sensation in the body, is this an emotional body sensation? And just practicing, you'll see it. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is the mind training and the mindfulness, the awareness, training yourself to stay in the seat of awareness, training yourself to, when the mind starts reacting to the emotions, which you may not even be aware of the emotions, but the mind starts going, to go back to the body, go to the emotions, as a refuge, as a safe place, as a to release the flow of thoughts, right? To help you stay in the seat of awareness, or move to the seat of awareness.
So if, say, for example, if we feel something in our solar plexus and we know it's a tension or a tightness or whatever it may be, we're not necessarily looking to label it some type of emotion to it, right? Like we may already know that that's a place of intense samskara area. So if we're meditating and we feel that, we don't necessarily have to come up with a word to describe it, right? I mean, as an
Yeah,
emotion?
not necessarily. You know, it it can be helpful to recognize the emotions, but it's always the case that of letting go of things, of like needing to do this or that,
Mm.
right? You don't have to label it. You don't have to not label it. You
Mhm.
don't have to know, right? You can explore and be interested in knowing without needing to know, without struggling to know, right? It's that sense of struggle that we want to drop.
Okay.
So, you know, and the mind can cause us to struggle with anything, right? So
Yeah.
it's more about noticing when you're struggling and dropping the struggle than it is about saying, well, I need to do this or I need to do that, because there are advantages to labeling, there are advantages to not labeling, right? When
Yeah.
you label, then you can get really good at identifying, you know, what's going on, at recognizing what's going on. When
Mhm.
you don't label, then, you know, that allows the mind to calm more.
Okay. Thank
So
you. And
there's no right or wrong.
yeah,
Um,
thanks, Lori. It sort of leads into my next question. And it may be a bigger answer or not, which is, I always hear Mickey say, or I've heard you say as well, like the one who's aware, drop the resistance. You who's aware, let go of resistance. So how does that look? I mean, because I know Mickey would say, relax your shoulders, relax your chest, relax your belly, but aren't you doing that with your mind?
well, you are. We're not trying to turn off the mind. But that's your
Okay.
higher mind. That's not your personal mind. So, it you know, the idea is that as we release the samskaras, the mind, the personal mind gets less active, right? So over the long run, that's what we're trying to do, to allow the mind to be calmer. But in the moment, you know, you have whatever samskaras you have. Your mind
So
is however active it is. And you can do things like focusing on the breath, counting the breath, you know, focusing on anything really that's in the present moment to calm the mind. But you know, at the end of the day, it's about releasing the samskaras, not calming the mind. So it doesn't really matter how calm the mind is in any given meditation.
so if you're aware and you say, you who's aware, so if I can be really present in the moment without any thoughts and all that sort of thing, which is quite easy to do, right? You feel your fingers touching a table or something, you're right there in that moment, and then there's some kind of resistance. How is the one who's aware dropping the resistance versus personal?
Right. It's not the one who's aware never does anything, because the one who's aware is just aware.
Why
So
does Mickey say you who's aware?
because because Mickey, when you know, every time I read his stuff, he's not precise. And I think he's intentionally not precise, because precision is impossible, because you know, what we're talking about here is kind of, you know, ultimately beyond concepts. So, and it really depends a lot on where you are, you know, on this path, where you are in the moment, right? Because it changes from moment to moment. So, you know, awareness never does anything. Awareness is just aware. So, but when he says you, the one who's aware, what he means is step back from this experience, step back from the thoughts, the emotions, the bodily sensations, and just decide this is not a problem. You know, the physical pain is not a problem. The fact I have all these thoughts is not a problem. The fact, you know, my spouse left me is not a problem. The fact I'm being falsely accused of murder and I'm, you know, and they just sentenced me to life in prison is not a problem. Right? It's just making that decision. It's just saying whatever's going on outside is not a problem, because the most important thing is I want to release my samskaras. And the way I do that is I don't resist the moment. And the way I don't resist the moment is to decide it's not a problem. Whatever is going on in this moment, I can let it in, right? It doesn't mean it's not a problem as in I'm not going to do anything about it.
Mhm.
It means this inner experience I'm having right now is not a problem. I can let it in, right? But I mean, we're stuck with this mind that you know, if the outside is a problem, it's very hard to you know, to take the focus off the outside. So in order to take the focus off the outside and let whatever's going on in, you know, so I mean, it's a you know, it's a mental technique basically at the end of the day, right? But you can decide. You can decide that your liberation is more important than anything going on outside. And that is the essence of a successful practice.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's impossible to maintain in all situations. I mean, you know, Mickey talks like it's not, but you know, that's my experience. So maybe I shouldn't be saying that, because it would be good to believe that nothing is ever a problem. And that is my aspiration. But you know, in the moment, it's very hard when, you know, when the shit really hits the fan to say this is not a problem and believe it. But that is the practice. But it works great for, like, you know, lots of stuff that I used to think of as a problem, and now I'm like, you know, I don't want that to happen. But when it happens, I'm not going to bother myself about it. You know? And the practice that I really want to, and we're really running out of time here, so we gotta, the one thing I really wanted to emphasize in these chapters is he talks about how the heart opens and closes, right? And so when you say this is a problem, or when you're thinking this is a problem, when you're, you know, you don't have to actually say it like that, but you know, when that's the belief that's driving you in the moment, basically you've closed your heart. And what he means by closing the heart is he means energetically your experience has gone from positive to negative, you know, and now you're feeling, you know, so if you're feeling fear, anger, sadness, loneliness, despair, um, there's a pretty good chance your heart has closed. And you can tell the difference. So like with sadness, you know, I get sadness a lot. And sometimes the sadness is like my heart is open. I'm letting myself feel the sadness, and I'm aware that it's coming from love. Like the love, you know, I'm sad because something or someone I love is not there, right? Or I'm, you know, so you know, this idea that you're never better off having your heart closed. But we often say, you know, if you're angry about something and someone says to you, oh, you know, do you really want to be angry? And you say, you're damn right I'm going to be angry. Do you know what this person did? I have every right to be angry, right? Like, how many of us have done, you know, have said something like that to ourselves or to others? So, you know, but at the end of the day, closing your heart only hurts yourself, because you can keep your heart open and you can still take action, right? You can still fight for justice, fight for the environment, you know, have boundaries, take a stand, but do it from a place of love, not anger or fear or, you know, loneliness or whatever. So, you know, he teaches this method that whenever you notice your heart closing, in other words, whenever you notice your experience going negative, whenever you notice yourself getting tense and you know, moving away from kindness and love, to ask yourself, is this worth closing? Is this worth closing over, right? And it's never worth closing over, because you're always going to be better able to deal with the external situation with your heart open. And all you're doing is basically creating or keeping some scars when you close your heart. It's because it's resistance, right? You're closing the energetic flow. So let's do a quick breakout. Actually, you know what? We don't. I'm going to do a breakout shortly, but about something else. We don't really have time. And the other one I want to make sure we have a breakout for. But, you know, I'm going to ask you to do this practice this week, that whenever you notice your experience going negative, whenever you notice your heart closing, well, first of all, just notice when your heart is closing or closed, right? You might not notice it when it's closing, but you might notice it after it's closed. But as soon as you can, notice when your heart is closing or closed. And then whenever you notice that, ask yourself, is this worth closing? Right? And to make the commitment to say, I vow to never close my heart again. Never. Right?
But then you have to be careful with that, because if you're somebody who's hard on yourself, you got to know that it's not realistic that you're never going to close your heart, or never going to close, and that you have to be gentle with yourself if you do, because you're just setting yourself up for disaster if you, right? Like, that's where I find Mickey really black and white, and that's
Oh, Mickey's
challenging.
also very black and white in saying never beat yourself up. That's closing your heart.
Yeah, and that's not realistic either. That you're never gonna, if you're someone who's really self-critical, or right, like, it's, I mean, to
Well,
be realistic.
well, it's not I mean, you can call it realistic. You need to practice compassion, self-compassion.
Of
Right?
course, but
So
I
you
just
need to
mean
go
it,
into it. Like I say, you can say, I vow to never again close my heart without the, you know, without the, you know, corollary that says, if I ever do, I'm going to beat myself up and I'm a bad person and I'm going to be hard on myself. And, you know, you can say, I vow to never close my heart. And I vow that if I ever do, I'm going to be really kind to myself and there's no problem. I vow to never close my heart. And if I ever do, it's no problem. Right? I mean, because practice is, again, it's holding these opposites, right?
isn't being compassionate and being understanding, isn't that about being like letting go of sternness and this must happen, like being more flexible? Like, I'm not saying to that
I'm not saying to
if,
be stern. You use the word stern.
So do you mean that if you make a vow to never close my heart and if I,
Think of it as an aspiration. Think of it as an aspiration.
okay, that's what I wondered. Okay, yeah.
It's
Okay.
not a legal contract. It's an
Right.
aspiration,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the point is that you want that strong intention. You want the intention to be, crazy strong, right? Because you need that when the moment comes up and your mind is screaming, close your heart. Like, it's not going to say close your heart. It's going to say, I have every right to be angry. It's going to say, how can I ever be happy in this situation? There's no way. It's impossible for me to be happy in this situation. So you need this really strong intention that says, really? Is that true? No. No. It's like the story of the Tibetan monk who was tortured and afterwards, they said, what was your greatest challenge? He said, the greatest challenge was not losing my compassion for my jailer. I maintained my compassion for my jailer the whole time because that was the most important thing to me. Right? So in order to, the mechanism for keeping your heart open is to have this great aspiration, this super strong intention to keep your heart open, to never close your heart. So you can, if you don't want to make a vow, like you can, you can just say, it's never worth closing. It's never worth closing. I know that it's never worth closing. You can just use that. If you don't want to make a vow that says I'm never going to close, you can just say, I know it's never worth closing. I know it's never worth closing. And you can think of different situations and say, nope, in that situation it's not worth closing. That situation not worth closing, right? And it's practice. It's not perfection. So, the important thing is to just do a practice that you try different practices, see how they go. If you find yourself beating yourself up, then you need to, adjust something. But when you find yourself beating yourself up, that's a perfect time to practice notice, relax, release. There's always a silver lining. Yeah. It is. I mean, we're each, ultimately we're our own teacher, right? We have to do what's right for us. So I'm going to throw, I may throw stuff out there that doesn't work for you. I'll do my best to explain where I'm coming from. Okay, so just before we move on, is there anyone who has any questions about this practice of noticing your heart closing and having this very strong intention never to close your heart? That it's never worth closing? Does it make sense to people that it's never worth closing?
The reason for that is because you're you're stopping the flow of energy by doing that.
Yeah, closing is resisting the moment. And so it's going to create or keep some scaras. And also, closing sucks and opening is wonderful. Just in terms of the actual like pleasantness, unpleasantness of the experience. And, like open means you're happy, which means you're spreading happiness. Closed means you're unhappy, which means you're spreading unhappiness.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
just
having
if
a
you
bit of
observe
a hard
how
time with it,
how
but
what?
I said I'm having a bit of a hard time with it, and it's around annoyance. Like I can see, like I have a lot of students sending me emails with things that I've answered a million times. So that's a good example of like, so every time I get one of those and I feel annoyed, I'm closing my heart. But
Well,
right, is
no,
this a good example?
um,
Like,
it depends what you do with the annoyance. If
I
annoyance,
just feel it. I
if
think
annoyance,
I
right,
still respond.
if annoyance comes up, and you open completely to it and you don't resist it and you just let it go through you, there's no resistance there, right? If the annoyance comes up and your mind starts going, oh, I can't believe this, idiot, I've already told them 3 times, and then your mind is,
Yeah.
that's, your heart's closed, right?
Okay. But even, I mean,
And
I
if you
don't
say to
think I'm not
yourself,
dwelling on it, but isn't it the moment that I get that email and read it and say, oh, like I've already answered this, isn't that little moment? But then I don't dwell on it. It's like, then I answer it. Like, that's my job. It's okay. I'm like, I do have compassion for them. I have some compassion and I have a bigger portion of annoyance than compassion. But,
you're practicing notice, relax, release. Whenever that comes up, like this is perfect small stuff, right? Practice, notice, relax, release. And ask yourself, is this worth closing? Is this worth closing is really a prelude to relax, release.
But is
Right.
this worth closing mean like being closed means I'm holding on to it? You're saying the emotion that comes up, that's just natural. That's okay. The annoyance is okay. It's like holding on to the annoyance. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it's the samskara getting hit, the heart, the spiritual heart closing, or the emotional heart closing, right? And then the question is, does it stay closed? Because the only way to prevent that initial close is to release the samskara. So, the samskara is there, okay. So then it closes, and then the idea is to notice it quickly, and then relax, release, right? And the phrase, is this worth closing, or something like it, is the the positive, it's bringing this positive thinking, this positive intentional thinking, and it's a particular phrase that that I find works in pretty much every situation. Like it just goes right to the heart of what you're doing here, right? Right to the heart of, this aspiration to release your samskaras. So it's just a particular way of looking at the situation of any disturbance, because any disturbance involves the, the valve of the energetic heart, or the spiritual heart closing, cutting off the energy. And so right away going, oh, is this worth closing over? No, and then relax, release, right? You can't actually open your heart. You can only notice it opening and closing and decide that it's not worth closing. Decide that I'm not not going to resist this.
Lori, there are so many really important things that you've talked about here tonight that are just they're just really blowing me away. I mean, they're just really important. Is there a way that we could get, or I would be interested in listening to our sessions during the week, taking notes, because I don't things don't stay with
Yeah,
me.
I mean, if you or anyone wants to access to the recording, that's no problem. Just let me know.
Oh, good, cool, okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I just want to get to our last thing, which is going to be part of the home practice, which we've talked about already a little tonight, which is being the captain of your ship. So we're going to do a little captain of your ship exercise. And the idea is to help expand your comfort zone by going beyond it externally in your actions. So the idea is think about something that if you did this or didn't do it, it would bring you some joy or some relief from suffering. So, it's kind of like a resolution, like a New Year's resolution or something. But the difference here is that um, it's not a super big thing. It could, it's something that should be um, not the hardest thing in the world, right? It should be, something manageable. But also something that that you think would be helpful for your happiness, helpful for your suffering. So, it might be, it might be being more I'm going to sit every day for 15 minutes, or I'm going to sit 6 days a week for 15 minutes, or I'm going to, you know, maybe it's something around food, or maybe it's something around, I'm going to do one act of kindness every day, one small act of kindness, or it could be anything. But it's an action, right? It's an external action that you're going to either do or not do. And the idea is to make it measurable, right? So it's not like just, I'm going to be kinder, right? Make it measurable. Like I'm going to do one act of kindness every day, or I'm going to do 4 acts of kindness every week. Something you can measure. And, the idea here is to help you be the captain of your ship. So spend a few moments just thinking about what you might do or not do, refrain from doing. And while you're doing this, notice what your personal mind is telling you. What your personal mind is saying to you. No, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But I like doing this. So, and just in terms of a time frame, so we're tonight's week 5, so we're 3 weeks from the end. So whatever you're doing it for, well, let's just say you're doing it for 1 week. It's just for 1 week for now. Okay. All right, so we are pressed for time. So I'm going to get in breakout groups, and you can talk about what it is you're thinking of doing. So here we go. So we'll have 5 minutes.
Stuff.
Oh, we're back.
Okay.
Everybody's laughing. Yay.
We
Yeah.
got locked out.
Yeah. So, does anyone want to toss out just popcorn style, just what you think you're going to do? You can still change it, but just what do you think is a good thing to do for you?
For me, it was, it comes down to maybe my act of kindness might be for myself and just nailing down, okay, a regular practice time.
So so how do you make that concrete?
So a regular time every day
So
for
you're gonna
me
do-
anyway. Yeah.
you're gonna do the same time every day.
Yeah.
Do you know what time that is?
That would probably be at 8:30.
Okay.
It's already past. Yes, it's already, we're already eating into it. Or maybe 9 o'clock. I'll have to look. I'll have to work that out.
Well, it can be 8:30 except Wednesdays.
Yeah, right. And then the Tuesday,
I
yes.
mean, it's just between now and next Wednesday, so it's really just 6 nights.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone else?
Adding a second meditation in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. And then I also added in, don't buy sugar at the store to bring into the house, and eat a salad instead of candy.
Okay. I would just pick one of those three things.
The meditation then is what
Yeah.
I'll pick.
Yeah. And you
Okay.
can do the other ones too, but just make one the focus of this week.
Okay. Second meditation is the commitment.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. Antonella?
So, and this is going to be really hard for me, but not to look at my phone until I've, had my morning glass of water, made coffee, and then sat down to do my meditation, like not look at my phone.
Till after your meditation.
Yeah, because I just go off in a tangent. Like I like my ADHD, like I'll end up looking at some kind of an ad and I'll go, how the hell did this happen?
Right. Okay, great. Great. All right. So there's some examples. It really should be measurable. It shouldn't, and it's got to be an action that somebody could observe and say you did it or you didn't do it, right? So not, it's not about what's about your inner experience, it's about your actions. And the idea here really, like, we're focused on this, whatever it is that you choose to do or not do. This is about working with our urges, right? It's about noticing how your personal mind is driving you to break this. Practicing notice, relax, release when you feel that urge to break it, right? And just working with that, and just being, I'm not going to act on the urge. I'm just not going to act on the urge, right? It's just a decision that says my liberation is more important than, looking at my phone, looking at the newspaper, whatever it is that your personal mind is telling you. Your freedom is more important. So it really is about setting an intention, setting your course, you're on your ship, you're setting your course, and you're going there. You're not going to get turned around by your personal mind on this one thing for 1 week, right? So that's it really. The rest of the home practice is all the usual stuff, moments of center consciousness, small stuff. There's a talk, one called One Pointed Intention, about sticking to your decision. And it's only a 25-minute talk this week, so it's easy. And Antonella, you have your hand up, did you? Oh, that's the same.
Sorry, I just didn't lower it from
Yeah,
before.
sorry,
Okay, no. Thank you.
yeah. So, good luck with your being the captain of your ship. You know, remind yourself, I want to be the captain of my ship. I don't want my samskaras to be in charge. And good luck. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Lauren.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night,
Take
everyone.
care.
Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Have a good night.
See you
Good
next
night.
week, everyone.
Have a good week.
So can I just say something really quickly?
Yeah, 1 sec. I'm just going to stop the recording.